but devil's advocate, because I want to know who you are. In fact, the goal here this evening is to get, you're all familiar with Sonny. You've seen him quoted, you've seen plenty of articles written about him, his points of view. I hope at the end of our time, you know him as a person a bit better. His motivation, his evolution, from where he started to where he is now, and how he sees the future unfolding as the NCAA and college sports go through this transition period. So, I mean, I've known Sonny for, man, going back to the 1990s.
Yeah, so. One time, I got your original article. Tom didn't like me originally.
I didn't like it, really? He wrote something mean about you?
No. He didn't like me. I should have put it in the right content. He didn't like me because he didn't understand youth basketball and summer basketball and all that yet. But as he got older and wiser and formed the Aspen Institute with his credentials, he understood that there are both sides to a story, and he's been a champion of journalism for a long time now. So he didn't like me because he didn't know, not me, the people that I like. Oh. So that's okay, Tom. Your Aspen Institute is a testament to your life, sir.
It's my redemption.
That is a testament. See, that redemption word, it's just redemption, devil's advocate, redemption, like, Al Pacino here, and we're the devil's advocate here.
Yeah. This
is an open forum to a great bunch of people with a great moderator who's not going to throw, just little cream puffs to me. I told Tom, we're on ESPN. You got to satisfy your bosses at Disney. Just give me what you want, and let's go for it. Because I respect the integrity of the journalist. He's a hell of a journalist.
Thank you. So, just for the record, I never did not like you. I'm just like an equal opportunity tough guy, I go after everybody and ask them the tough questions.
See what he did? He responded the way the mass media does. I didn't say me in particular. I changed that. I didn't change it. I explained it better by saying, you don't understand why that I was even in the conversation, because you didn't really understand basketball and youth basketball and athletes, at that level. So I was thrown into that, and I accepted it, and that's good. And look where you're sitting, at a great university with great students, and I'm already talking. Go ahead, Tom.
Well, thanks. That's a big part of my education process. And it was interesting. I think one of our first interactions was when you brought me to the ABCD camp. After I did a piece on Lenny Cook, the cautionary tale in college sports. Lenny Cook, he was the #1 basketball player in the country. I mean, he was it. And he and LeBron, tell me if I get any of this wrong here, he and LeBron come to the ABCD camp, and they battle. And that's LeBron got the best of Lenny that day. And Lenny and his entourage and the whole thing, that was the beginning of the end of Lenny.
Yes.
Never got drafted, barely graduated high school. His head was full of all sorts of ideas, which were from La La Land, and look at LeBron now. So I read the stories. It was pretty tough. I don't know how I treated you in the story or not, but it's pretty tough.
Well, I was the guy that brought all these guys together, and at some media, but not Tom, described it as a flesh market. See, because that's what I basically have done. I've been able to present young people in a light no different than any auditorium or stage in the world, in music, and acting, and anything. But I was able to do that, and I did it pretty well. So Tom was there, interesting enough, to cover the story that I was presenting, because everybody around the world wanted to see this wonderkid, LeBron James, who we only remember as taking the jersey and put on probation from the High School Association in Ohio, to Lenny Cook, who, if you had a category as a kid who was elevated, and he was a good basketball player, beyond comprehension, was New York Lenny Cook in the early 2000s. So you're right, it was the game to come.
Yeah, it really was. But this says something about Sonny's character. After I put that together, you know what? Then I get a phone call from Sonny saying, hey, Tom, I'd like you to come speak at the ABCD camp to all of my players about what they need to learn. So when you do this tough story on people, they often don't want to have anything to do with you at all. Sonny's instinct was to engage, bring you right into the center of his business. And I don't know what he said that day, but I thought that was telling, and on some level explains how you got to the point you're at right now. So I mean, again, I've known you for a long time, but I've never actually profiled you. So I called Sonny the other day. I said, all right, what is the best piece that's ever been done on you? So I want to do a little bit of prep for this conversation. So, well, there's, I've been a Playboy, there are fewer things that excite me than the idea of, Sonny Vaccaro, Playboy, number one. But then he says in the article, you know what the headline of the article is? The Redemption of a Sneaker Pimp. So what exactly makes you proud of that title, The Redemption of a Sneaker Pimp?
Because, like Paul Harvey said, when you get the rest of the story, why I felt so comfortable in that, even though it was Playboy, my wife Pam and I, we did think about it. She more than me doing it. The writer was Neil Gaiman. And Neil Gaiman was one of the great writers in America. He's written seminal books. He did a book on the Jewish takeover of Hollywood in the 1920s. It's a landmark thing. He did Walt Disney's bio, and today he's doing Ted Kennedy's. So when I told Tom that, inside of this 2,000-word magazine piece was a piece from someone I never knew before. I never met before. But I knew his writings. I got his books and I read them. And I said, let him tell the story. And the reason I wasn't afraid of redemption, because you people, being the media, have used that many times with me. Everyone thinks I saw the light. God came down upon me and said, you got to do this. I mean, the Sermon of the Mount, all that crap. I was the same person then, but in order for me to get here, I had to have people like that talk about what it really was like. And by using that, you saw the chuckles from the kids, the redemption of a sneaker pimp. Well, sneaker pimp, I actually got mad at Taylor Branch for using the word sneaker pimp. Not mad, I asked him why. Because what that does, and all the authors, all the writers tell me, when you see a headline, they don't put it in, the editors put it in. Sonny, all I did was a story, but that grabbed the attention. But if you read the article, if you read what Neil Gaiman said, you'll get to the point of my fight against the NCAA better than any sports writer will, because I know you guys do well.
Right. So let me ask you, do you need to be redeemed?
No, in my mind, I don't. No, I never. I think it's a silly thing that never happened to me. Redeemed for what? For speaking the truth of my mind? That's the only problem I have. I've never refused any people. I never said no to any writer. I've been burned by writers over the years. I burned by one guy in New York for 3 years who wrote a lot of articles about me to call me everything but a human being, and he never met nor talked to me in my life. And this started this crusade. I was classified as persona non grata because even while I was making lots of money and doing my job well, was on the other side of the world that wasn't supposed to be, the side that actually thought that giving the athlete something was good, or doing commercials and bringing them to the NCAA is good. So Tom, being redeemed and all that, if you want to judge me on who I am. And so when I come to Drexel and I go to these other schools, and I've been to 37 of them, let them walk away and see who they talked to tonight or who they met. Because now, for the first time in many of their lives, they finally talk to me and they're finally meeting me. You make an opinion. Stick with it. If you think I'm an asshole, then tell them that. If you think I know what I'm talking about, then listen to me and others. So, Tom, that's what it is. And that's why you're sitting there. That's why you've gotten to this point. That's why you could write a book. And that's why probably the best thing you ever did is something, it's not redemption, but it was a conscious thing that made you think of people who needed help, like the Aspen thing. I think that's who Tom Farrey always was. And I think what happened was you got an opportunity to reach out and get money and bring people in because you're Tom Farrey, the esteemed writer. I had an opportunity to do these things because I'm Sonny Vaccaro to discover Michael Jordan. See, I didn't have that platform. Now I have the platform. And when her and I walked away from this in 2007, we walked away from everything. And you know it. I called my friends down at Nike and Adidas and I said, I'll quit. Will you quit? They didn't quit. But you know what? I won. If you ask me about this battle, that's so silly, that whole silly battle. This is the most important thing. These kids, they're going to carry a message. They're going to go, something's going to happen. And something has to happen. No bad things change the world. We'll get into that. But I feel good about that.
So walk me through your journey. And I think there's a little bit of a parallel here, right? The NCAA is an organization in transition. There's a journey there. I want to know about yours. because there's a certain amount of syncing up here. How did you get involved in the business of college sports and, I guess, specifically recruiting? Take us back all the way to what, Dapper Dan?
Well, the Dapper Dan, I was 24 years old, 5 years older than the kids. I thought of having a high school all-star game in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The depth of depravity in basketball. I mean, you're talking about the Steelers or the Pirates in the 60s, especially the Steelers in football. You would have had an audience. A basketball game at the brand new Civic Arena, 10,000 people made for the hockey team. You're putting a high school all-star game there. There was never a high school all-star game in the world until the Dapper Dan. No McDonald's. McDonald's is the birth of the band, okay? So I did that, and it hit. We sold 10,334 tickets the first night of that game. Unbelievable success.
What made you think it was a great idea?
I have no idea other than I saw, I don't. I really don't, ladies and gentlemen. I don't. Everything I've done, Tom, and what we're talking about hopefully on the NCAA thing, is I can only tell you, it was like, I thought it could be done. I believed in it. I totally believed in me. I believe in it.
Do you have some, like, is it like this inherent marketing instinct you have? And what made you say, okay, yeah, this fills a marketing. People, if I put this together, people will show up. And
marketing in 1964,
right.
Marketing meant my daddy went to the grocery store and brought something home. There was no marketing. You know, the word marketing wasn't used until Nike got there. There was no marketing and commercialism. Go back to your audience. What do you think? Fizz. You never saw anything with athletes prior to Nike, and then Jordan. Jordan changed that world. So marketing had nothing to do with it. I wanted to showcase a bunch of high school kids who were great basketball players, and that's what I did, and it carried on to what you were talking about, Adina. I think there's a vehicle, there's a stage for anybody with talent in the world. That's what I did. And I did it always through my life, so that was it. And that opened every door in the world, because as soon as I did that, I became the guru, I became the god. And since we were the only one, do you ladies and gentlemen know that second year of the Dapper Dan, we had over 270-something, I still got the papers, our college coaches who attended the game. 270 of them, because that was the only place to go. They saw these 20 kids, and I had a preliminary game with 20 good kids too. So that was recruiting.
Your motivation wasn't to get the college. You didn't say to yourself, oh boy, the college coaches would love this if I put this together. You wanted to elevate. You saw these guys have great talent. These kids need to be celebrated for that talent. Let's smash them all together, and whatever happens after that.
Tom,
that was the motivation.
Duke Dukes and Big Panthers. I mean, what was my upbringing? Youngstown Penguins in basketball. I had no connection. I didn't understand. There wasn't big-time college basketball in 1965, ladies and gentlemen. There wasn't. No one knew anything. It was an afterthought to do in the wintertime. It was exactly what Naismith wanted. Keep the guys inside so they played basketball. No, I had no thought about that. And then I had a thought about, if people come and saw these kids play, maybe they get better scholarships. We weren't going to the pros in 1965 and 64. We were trying to go to college. And 80% of the kids, I think, in the history of Dapper Dan were minority kids. In the game of basketball, in one sense, however you describe it, is the greatest sport in the world to give kids who have no other opportunity to excel. Because basketball was a sport that you could play 365 days a year in the smallest damn gym in the world, on the playground, on the asphalt, in the winter, in the summer, whatever it was. And damn, the best athletes in the world. See, I still concede. So I'm off the track now. Go ahead. Yeah. That's why I did it, not for marketing.
Right.
I don't know what marketing was.
Gotcha. And the coaches were interested because you were aggregating the best, African American, players in one place.
Not just African American. They turned out. I didn't think that in 1964, 65.
But basketball still was.
No, I agree. But African Americans were excluded. Hell, there was no African American. They were going to African American schools. Their school went to Winston-Salem. Big Daddy Gaines had the best players in the world. Just like my guys at the football school. The great Eddie Robinson, the Grambling. The black kids were going to black schools. We're talking about the 60s. That's what I'm talking about. So that was the irony of it all. All these people, they're crazy people who had these motivational things and thoughts. What the hell I was thinking? If they just were smart enough to take 5 minutes and say, well, why would I say that? There could have been racism there. These kids weren't even getting into schools. On the O'Bannon case, one of the greatest things I ever done in the whole was Harry Flournoy, who played for Texas Western on the great race game in 1966. I started the Dan in 1964. You understand, that was black against white on the radio in the Cole Fieldhouse. You know, those kids, that's where they had to go. So there was no racial bias involved. It was an ability of an artist. I think I was always able to do that. I told one of the earlier classes today. God gave me a gift. That gift was, I recognized. I can't pass the test. I would never be an honor student here. Hell, I told most of these kids today, I graduated 4th from the bottom of my class. I swear to God. I swear to God. There was one lady in that whole school district, one lady in my life, academically, that turned to me and said, Sonny, you have the gift to speak. The only speaking I did, I was a football captain, and we would have pep rallies. And I'd talk at pep rally. I love to talk. But my point was, that Dapper Dan helped because I loved it and I knew it would give a vehicle. And I was absolutely right. And that's the hard part of my adjustment to 65 to 2014. Take 5 minutes and see who you're bitching about. Beat me up. You know, you mentioned recruiting players. I never recruited a player in my life, other than how Johnstown State did something when I was a student there. Bob Costas, the great Bob Costas, I go on national television, NBC, 2 years ago, and the first thing he says to me, I haven't seen him in 5 years, but, well, Sonny, you're known for delivering players to, and I stopped him. I stopped the great Bob, and we were doing a live show in Radio City Music, I believe it was, in New York. I said, I never did that. But what did Bob do? He remembered John Feinstein writing about Alonzo Mourning, and because John Thompson was my best friend at that time, making Alonzo Mourning go to Georgetown. It never happened. You don't give credit to John. The Hoyas are most important to Alonzo Mourning. So I resent that. That's where the argument starts with me and the media. But I never shied from you guys. And your thing, you know, and you're very honest, and that's who Tom Farrey is, though. When he said that to you, I doubt very much that a lot of people I knew would have said what I did. But Tom wasn't the only one, because I believe that the whole future lies on journalists. I know we're getting away from it all, but it might be interesting to these kids. My belief, let me tell you the turning point of the O'Bannon case, in my eyes. Forget Michael Housfield and all the things, because once we were started, we were rolling. I didn't know, I swear to God, I never knew it would ever be in court. When we quit in 2007, there was no O'Bannon case, Tom. I was mad about kids not being able to go to high school to pros. I was mad about the damn age limit. And I always said the NBA and the NCAA had a conspiracy. They were a conspiracy. So I was fighting for Brandon Jennings and all that stuff. And all of a sudden it showed up. You know when the tide turned for O'Bannon publicly? Because in the early, it's like those political polls. You know, you get these people hate that guy, these people like that guy. You know, the politicians are all full of crap. They never get anything done. They argue. Then there's something, well, there's an answer to this. Well, you know what changed? I swear to God, he's here tonight. I would have said it if I said it 1,000 times. Lowell Bergman from Frontline was a correspondent that did the seminal piece in all of journalism and television for the thing with CBS on the 60-minute speech when he did against cigarette smoking. They made a movie out of it. If you saw the movie, The Insider, and Lowell Bergman's part was played by Al Pacino. He was the reporter. Lowell got fired because he argued with Mike Walsh and Bill, the guy that ran CBS, because they wanted to change the script. Bergman walked away. I never knew Lowell Bergman. I saw that movie 90 times. First of all, because Pacino was my favorite actor at the time, but what a hell of a story that was. It was compelling. That was journalism. Then a guy named Joe Nocera. I've read Joe Nocera from everything going after, you know, that crazy guy in Oklahoma. Joe writes about everything except sports. I didn't know he was. I think he was Italian. Okay, that's the thing I knew. Okay, so I read him, and he writes a story. Unbeknownst to me, I didn't do the story. Joe Nocera does the story. Then I met Taylor Branch. Now I'm talking about 3 people who are out of the world. Taylor Branch won an award, I think, the Pulitzer for several pieces on Martin Luther King on all the racetracks. He wrote the book that won the Pulitzer. He had nothing to do with sports. Those three individuals had nothing to do with sports. Like Tom had a tie to sports. That's his job to talk about sports. When they wrote stories about what this case was evolving into, I knew in my heart Eddie was going to win this case. Because why? Because you have to change the public's mind. You have to get them from the mindset of just watching the games. And because they gave birth to other journalists, then we are everywhere. We are everywhere except the sports page, unless ESPN would come in. And he did some of the best pieces, and some of the, and you know why? When Tom would write a story, and I put him in touch with somebody if I could help, or even Hosfield or Ben, whoever it was so much because I was never afraid, especially Eddie O'Bannon. Eddie was the greatest plaintiff in the world. He's the nicest human being you'll ever meet. And he accepted this role with dignity and courage. Because as you know, you should know, when the judge first ruled, the world thought we had a setback. Judge Wilkins said in that case that, I believe, and blah, 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 the plaintiffs, I'm not going to give the plaintiffs monetary damages. They've got to sue individually. So what she said, according to law, was they as a group can sue because there was too many athletes who were going to sue as a group, and you could not have calculated the numbers. So she said, but individually, they can continue this suit, and they can sue individually. So that meant Eddie and Harry Flournoy, the kid I was talking about, I go back and forth, on the Texas Western team, one of the players on the Texas Western team, he was part of this, and David Lackman was. 2 kids from that team, 2 kids from that Kentucky team. I got away from it. But Tom, what happened was, from that story on, but she did say, the most important part, the case can continue in the antitrust. And the bottom of my heart, I felt bad. I wish Eddie and Harry and all those guys would have got $1 million. Who am I to spend somebody else's money? But when she ruled, and you live by the law. She said no to that, but okay to the antitrust. But the antitrust, it gave us the strength to continue. And we won the antitrust. No matter what these people in Indiana want to do, they want to take the Supreme Court and all that crap, fine. We won for the rights for these athletes to be compensated in some way. So there was a deal. Go ahead, Tom.
Let me try to back.
I'm sorry.
No, you're great. You're great. You like, okay, I nothing left here. No. Okay. No, it's good. So, but I want to jump back. Again, I want them to know you, Sonny, and sort of your evolution here. All right, so you saw an opportunity with players, and you saw the value. There's sort of a connect.
Yes, sir.
You had sort of a certain connection with players in the mid-'60s.
Yes.
That, today helped inform the Ed O'Bannon case eventually down the road. So, okay, so you did Dapper. Then what was the next chapter of your career?
Well, next chapter of my career, I went to Las Vegas, played poker, went back around Dapper Dan, had some camp. Isn't that interesting? But it's interesting. I graduated with my degrees. I have a degree in teaching. I taught special education. That was the term used for kids who were behind in the 60s. I taught special education. I drove back. I was 20 miles away from my hometown. That was my first job I had. The funny thing about life is, if I could have got the job as the head coach of my high school team, I always wanted to be the head football coach at Drexel High School. That's what's happened when you're from those times. Football was king, and I was the king of all kings at that time. And I want to go back and coach those kids. That's what I went back and I was just sitting coach. But the Dapper Dan changed me. So by knowing the kids were playing the super coach, a new thing was happening. The ABA was happening. And kids didn't have to, the NBA wouldn't draft them. The biggest thing that ever happened to me on that world was one day I got a phone call from a player I had helped get a scholarship, a football player from Drexel High School, to go to Eastern Michigan. And he said, Sonny, can you come up to Eastern Michigan? I'm going to introduce you to somebody that's a great player, but he has to go pro now. I'll get the name at the end, it's a better punch to it. So I drive up there, before, Eminem started singing about 10 miles, I was on yeah. I go there, I walk in the house, and there's a big Hawker man named Willie Merriweather. And Willie was an All-American player, and I knew his name, he was an All-American too. And then there was a big black Doberman, there was a skinny little kid next to him. This skinny little kid got kicked out of Eastern Michigan. His his freshman year, 4 or 5 games into the season, because he was aggravating the call, he turned around and swung, and in his swing, he hit a referee. And that did happen, he did do it. So Eastern Michigan and all its benevolence, and we're talking about 1971, 72 now, and all that turmoil, and we had all kinds of race relations problems when kids were, kids in the West were like Tommy Smith and John Carlos, put up their hands in 66. The revolution was on, and that's what I agreed have to watch change in the way. But the kid, said, help me get in. I arranged a workout for this kid with the Virginia squad because they knew me because of that man. I knew Al Bianchi. He knew me. Yep. I brought the kid down. He worked out for the Virginia squad. A week later, they signed him for a 6-figure contract. His name, ladies and gentlemen, was George Gervin. So you that don't know who George Gervin, that kid in Eastern Michigan, kicked down for swinging around, and they probably should have done that. They kicked him out of school and disgraced him. That's my point. They disgraced him. Grew up to be this kid who's one of the 50 greatest basketball players that ever lived. He's in the Hall of Fame. He has 6 charter schools in the state of Texas, 4 in the state of Texas, 2 down in Arizona. He's pitched it all over, and last year, when the San Antonio Squires won the NBA championship, the first trophy was handed to George, who handed it to the owner. All of them. So I got involved because I was Sonny Vaccaro from Dapper Dan. So that catapulted me tonight.
So how have you been involved with Nike?
Same thing. I'm doing my summer camp, minding my business. I watch these kids play basketball. I watch the kids walk around things. All of a sudden, I see they're walking differently. They're walking, I take my shoe off 3 times. They're walking like, their shoes like that, they're walking on this, no one ever changes their tennis shoes. They were called tennis shoes. They go, they eat in a room with that and all that stuff. When they come in, they're always in their tennis shoes. They come camp, they leave camp, got the same tennis shoes on. So I said, okay, I'm gonna do something. I'm an Italian kid, again, Italian, whose father was in my town for 50 years, shoemaker. So I went down and I described some things I wanted done. And I told him, cut some air out. So the first air or something was a sunny air. But mine wasn't like with bubbles on the soles. Mine was cut out this here, so air would go through the cutouts. I literally cut out the canvas or the leather, okay? And Bobby made, we put Velcro on the top of the shoe. Velcro. This is 1970s, whatever year that was, 77. I brought that to Nike. I brought it out to Nike show. I got there.
You're the founder of Air, Nike?
Huh?
You're the founder of Air?
No, my Air, Tom. You guys tell me what Air is in the soul.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the
but I cut out part of the canvas. That was my Air. Just cut a hole in the whatever hell this was. Okay. So I do that. So we're out there, and Phil Chenier, a great player for the Baltimore Bulls at that time, was represented by a friend of mine then, a lawyer, an agent who was getting players, like probably helped him get some players introduced because of the Dapper Dan. So Louis called me and Jerry Davis called me. They knew Nike because Phil Chenier had a $5,000 a year contract, and they were just starting their business in 1977. They only opened in 75. So I flew out to Oregon. I told some of these kids, $125. I remember the price of the ticket. One way there, $125 back. Okay? I paid what? I put it in a knapsack. The only person who knew what a knapsack was for kids had was Joe and Sarah, because his family probably had that. We put our groceries in that. That's what a knapsack was. And your mother or your dad took them from the garden, usually it was a while away from the home, and you put them in this, they brought them and they cut the vegetables up. So now, I put my shoes in there. I put them on I get the Nike, they greet me. I put them on a table. They look at it, they take me to a Chinese restaurant for dinner. And I never saw those shoes again, but the idea of those shoes did materialize years later. And so that's how I got to Nike. They liked my enthusiasm. They came to the Dapper Dan. They witnessed the Dapper Dan. And I said, give me free shoes. I'm going to put them on. And Alvin King was the player of the year that Wayne McCoy, Eugene Banks, and Maggie played.
But it was at the high school.
The high school level, not college.
Because that's what's interesting, is you're known as the summer basketball guy. But there's a progression. You started with the high schools.
Yeah.
Right? And then you moved into the colleges.
77, right after Nike. Right. Nike brought me in. This never would have happened. First of all, I never would have happened. I never would have had ABCD camp. I never would have had big my whole life. And so So that's what happened. So they came back to see the Dapper Dan, and I put the shoes on the kitchen plate. And we had, by that time we had 17,000 people. They enlarged the civic arena, 17,900 something. So that was the number. We had more than Elvis Presley. I just wanted to make it fact. Okay? So now they come to the Dapper, and Rob Strasser, who was second command with Bill Knight, turns to me after that. They bring me back on. They buy the ticket this time. And they give me a job and they pay me some money. And they say, how do we get into college basketball? I thought he did college basketball. They had one school, University of Oregon, Dick Carter. And Phil Knight's a graduate of Oregon. As you know, now he owns Oregon University. He did good for the graduate. He bought the school. Think about it. They still call it University of Oregon, but it's still school. So anyway, that's how that happened. I said, well, pay the coaches. What do you mean pay the coaches? Pay them. They don't make any money. Those coaches, the names you would think today, equivalent today, were making $25,000 a year. That's what their pay was. And they all ran summer basketball camps. That's where they really made their money.
Yeah, Wooden used to make $100.
No, he never did. It's funny you use Wood. But no, he didn't. He did not. John never actually made money. John did his bad in financials, making money off his legend. But he sort of left before that deal really kicked in. He quit right after he won the 13th or something like that. Okay, so that's how that started. That was by accident. But entree was the Dapper Dan, then whatever. Everything was the Dapper Dan to put me on the level. Now I convinced Nike. We started signing colleges. We signed everybody. No one ever paid a college coach. I know I paid them. I used my check. Then Phil Knight would reimburse me by wiring it into my account. I didn't have 10 cents. Now I'm writing out $5,000 checks to Tarkanian and Electric Gazelle and all these guys.
Now, where's the NCAA on this at that time? Are they saying time out this right, or nobody's even paying attention?
Tom, the NCAA didn't enter my life until almost right around, a little earlier they entered into it. But it wasn't nothing to do with this. You have to understand, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, they never said a damn thing to me until I left Nike in 91 and 92. I was never persona non grata until I left. And I understand that after I left. First of all, we were subsidizing their programs. Second of all, when we went in Nike, we saved basically their coaches. We were paying them more. And I know one of the biggest names ever didn't take job A and go to job B and leave job B because we gave enough money to stay at job A. Because job B was a rebuilding thing, and job A was a potential national champion. It was a business venture by us and a smart decision by him. So we subsidized. We were paying more than the schools were paying. And then when the Big East came, we owned the world. Because why? ESPN was born the same time as the Big East. They were born together. They had birth and childbirth together. Different hospitals, same baby. Make money. That's what it was. What do we need? Players? What do we need? A vehicle to show the public. So we sponsored the Big East. We were the second largest sponsor. Budweiser and Nike were the first sponsors of Big East basketball. They don't want to talk about that now. So the same thing. I was invited. The only time I ever met David Hurst, who's always played, Gilbert and my Jean Valjean, been chasing me forever. Was I met him at an NCAA party that I was invited to. Because that's the way it was. I was never not invited. I got tickets to everything, Tom. Hell, ESPN gave him like tickets to the Super Bowl in San Diego. We didn't go. I drove back home and I gave the tickets back to Bill Bryant, who was the first president of ESPN. Anyway, so I just want to give you a picture. Tom's question was, when did they get mad at me, basically? That's
when did it turn? When did they start getting mad at you?
When I left Nike.
But how did they do that exactly?
Because I had to fight Nike. Nike was a good partner. Phil Knight was a good partner. Because when I left, they were corporate America, and when I left, the last great thing in my mind I did for Nike wasn't Michael Jordan. It was signing the University of Miami to an all-school deal in 1988. That changed the world. Instead of giving the coaches the money, the schools now said, give me the money, we'll give you all our teams, not just the basketball team. You give us the money, we'll pay our coaches. So, to answer Tom's question, and to answer your curiosity, and then one thing you should remember tonight, if nothing else, I'm going to tell you something that they can't hide from. When I did that deal, you might say early, I signed the local code, all the coaches to personal contracts. Maybe their president did though. Maybe their athletic director should have known it. Maybe the president did. The sport was just growing. But if you're signing an all-school deal in 1988 with a team like the University of Miami's football team, okay, the badly were good, and they said, we'll give you, and Sam Jankovich, the AD, who was really hallowed those days, on all the committees, Sam did the deal. He got a man who was a common friend of both of us, at that time I didn't know, named Rob Ades. Rob Ades was a labor lawyer in Washington, who was a Miami University graduate. He called me and said, Mr. Vaccaro, I have a deal for you. When he told me what the deal was, it was like the Godfather. It was a deal I couldn't refuse. It was unbelievable. When I knew what was happening, and I called Phil Bank and Rob Strauss right after that, they didn't understand, but I knew what happened. When you say you got the whole school, they can't bitch anymore. They're signing off. The president has to sign off on this. So all this groaning, Tom, all these things you guys write about and beat up everybody about, they're the reasons it happened. And when I made that argument at the night conference in Washington, D.C. in 2000, when some president asked me, Mr. Vaccaro, why should we take your money? And I responded to him and said, well, you shouldn't take our money, but you will. Why? Because it's our money, and you didn't have it, now you have it, we don't have it, and we're partners. But they signed a deal with the evil empire, according to them. It wasn't according to us. They could have backed out any time, Tom.
Yeah, so at one point you told Bob Wilson, you said, what I'm doing is morally wrong.
Yeah.
What did you mean by that?
What I meant was morally wrong, and Bob did what Alexander Wolf and Argentine did. They didn't finish the rest of the story. So what I told Bob, I'm doing something that's morally wrong because the athletes aren't getting anything. Because if you remember, just for your information, Bob Wilson is one of the great writers in American writing. He wrote for the Times, and he wrote 10 or 12 of the best articles ever written about the NCAA over a period of time. One time he called they should be NASCAR. Otherwise, Bob Wilson had the foresight to see that why they just sell, on these athletes just sell logos like NASCAR. Okay? So what happened was, I told Bob, it's morally wrong. Give them money. I said that before. Bob just didn't put it in the article. So it applied to me, but I didn't say it. Yeah, it was morally wrong. It's always been morally wrong because they don't share it with the kids.
So at some point did you feel bad about being part of a system that you thought was exploiting with kids?
No. What I felt bad about, that with or without me, it was going to continue. The only way these kids had a chance was me arguing every how. Because that was in 1998, 99, 2000, that's when Bob was writing. Then the 19th happened. I know all these stuff, Tom. But I saw the end of the tunnel here. I had a platform. I just wasn't able to do it all the time to get this message up. The great Ted Cobble chastised me and beat me up on Nightline. Man, I made Nightline. That was the epitome of making it. I was 3 times on 60 Minutes with the wonderful Leslie Stahl. I mean, I did all these things, but what they never said was that the enemy isn't me. The enemy is the ones that put the coattails on the kids. So I felt I had a better chance, and I was right, because in 2009, O'Bannon signed.
So how many, and we'll get to your questions here in a minute, I guess so much more.
Oh my
I
God.
feel like I want to unfurl this a little bit more.
Well, please,
Let's turn it over to you. But so all those slights over the year, how much did they inform your motivation in investing in the Ed O'Bannon case? Because it's been a lot of energy, it's been a lot of going through files, calls with Michael Hausfeld, players, I want to get this in a moment too. I'm calling all these players taking to be part of this lawsuit, and they're just, frankly, chicken. I mean, total lack of bravery from an enormous number of athletes. I mean, and you stuck with it, and you've been passionate. I mean, how much did those early experiences inform your passion and your
everything? Yeah, it was. Only because I tried to do it under a different way. I got stronger as my own personality and persona got stronger, and I felt that this is the only way to do it. I had to basically walk away. So what that did, it led to 2007. It gave me the courage because, just for their information, in 2007, I had 2 years ago on a very lucrative contract with Reebok. Financially, we were employed with very low money. And second, they sponsored all my events. My events were the signature events of the summertime. So, but yeah, you know, them beating me up and me fighting back, them never asking me to attend these stupid summer meetings. I say stupid now. They weren't stupid in thought. They were stupid in how the hell would you leave out the greatest antagonist you have without asking questions? If I'm such an idiot or I'm such a bad person, why did you do business with me? So I was offended by that. And then I started seeing summit meetings. And probably the thing pushed me over the top, the thing that, if there's one signature moment from the NCAA, was a stupid meeting in Louisiana, New Orleans, I believe, that Mal Grant, Mike Krzyzewski, David Stern, you know, all the hierarchy, all the guys who were given this wisdom by the Lord himself, said, we're going to save kids from themselves in summer basketball. They formed this union called IHOOPS that they said they were going to take over the youth being 15, 16, 17-year-olds, and put in program to save them.
But they formed it.
They
As a for-profit company.
As a for-profit company, absolutely. And with the okay, because I think the biggest story that the media has ever missed is not the illicit conspiracy between the NCAA and the NBA, because you can't deny that Stern and Grant were on the same stage, backed by Mike Krzyzewski, the deity of all basketball coaches, and he's there saying that this is what we should do. They were actually condemning kids that they have no authority over, high school kids. They didn't have any power or the right to do this, because they thought their wisdom would impose upon these kids brilliance enough to forsake all these fake gods that you're seeing, summer basketball or people running around. That was, to me, the most offensive and egregious thing that they've done to me in the world I lived in personally. That they could have, they supported guys from the AAU, some guys that have not been really good people. They brought everybody in. And the one guy who volunteered was everywhere. I spent many days with David Stern. He used to call us, we were the only civilians, by Adam Silver, that said to us personally. David invited him, we went to see him twice a year. They had lunch with him, opened up, they shut things down. David was always courteous and gracious to me. I got tickets to the All-Star game. I did, I was treated well, and they still treat me wonderful. But that's when I said, screw all, I'll do this my way.
Yeah. Okay, 2 questions I'm going to turn over real quickly. As tight as possible, how did you celebrate the Ed O'Bannon wedding?
Other than marrying Pam, and the safety of my family and all that, I was never more ecstatic that it happened so quickly. A stranger called me and told me we won, and I didn't know what it meant. I can't explain to you. I'm too old. I shouldn't have reacted. I reacted, I guess, like a child this time or something. But it was so sincere and so deep, I'll never forget it. Other than her saying, yes, she'll marry me, I don't believe I ever felt so good in my lifetime.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what is the, at the end, I mean, as the appeals process works its way through, it's a complicated
yes,
scenario.
It is.
You've got the union movement in Northwestern and possibly public schools working its way through the system. It's complicated. I know you're not a legal expert, but at the end of the day, what do you think college sports will look like 5 years? Yeah, 5 years down the road.
I think there'll be a governing body. I don't think it'll be Mal Grant or people like that. I don't think that system works. I think
Do you think it'll be an NCAA?
Well, they're going to call it that, because they have to call it that. But I think a man like Mark Cuban will run it, a business person. I think you need a business person with an open mind to know the new guy, Larry Scott, these old-time conference commissioners, Delaney and Sly, they did a great job by buffooning everybody. I don't think they deserve to be paid $3 million a year for running a conference and have to have great football teams or whatever. But I think they should pay whoever they are for putting this together, because what they have done, what we have created, what I see will happen, big-time college sports is no different than Big Bang Theory. It's no different than TV reality shows. It's its own reality show. They're putting games Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday morning, all these things. So what do I think will happen? There will be a new influx of people who will run the organization, and there has to be rules and regulations. But I think, the most important part of what I think, is the players will be compensated in some form when their 4 years are over. So there's no other way that you can do it. So in the sense of encouraging them to go to school, they can't play pro. If they can be pro, they play 1 year, they get 25% of it. They get stay in school 2 years. By that, you're going to share in the revenues of the school you played for. That's what you're going to share in.
But if the prohibition at the college level falls, doesn't it fall at the high school level, maybe even all the way down to the Liability level? We saw Moni Davis.
Well,
she's on a Chevy commercial now.
Tom, that was one of the biggest victories of all, because Little League Baseball was actually on the agenda of the thing. They ridiculed Eddie O'Bannon for saying, do you think Little Leaguers should be paid? And Eddie at first said, yeah, and he got a little weak outside in the courtyard after, and he said, well, maybe.
He pulled back.
Yeah, he pulled back, yeah. But you know what, though? Why shouldn't they get paid? All the child actors, all the child entertainers get paid. What does age have to do with employment? I think that's my answer. I don't know what it has to do.
So we have to go with a model like they have in Europe. I remember I did a piece on Ricky Rubio a few
Yes.
years ago. I went over there to play for FC Barcelona, signed a contract at 14, had his Nike deal, had his agent, and everything was above board. There was no scandal, there were no street agents, there was no bouncing around from team to team. He had a quality development process.
Absolutely.
And he's 20 years old, has his head screwed on straight. He's got a little money, he's got a little condo that lives near his parents. Zero scandal at all, and a pretty good player. I mean, at the end of the day, is that what at least basketball is going to look like in this country, where you have kids all the way down to 14 signing contracts if they have value?
Well, Tom, I think kids to sign contract for 12 they have value. I don't think it's your job or my job to realize the value of what somebody wants to pay for. I said this to Ted Koppel that night, I think. Why? I'll give you a quick story, then over. And I said it to Ted Koppel. Why can't Nike sign to, we talked about Chris Webber. That night, I left Nike out with Adidas. Gene Corrigan, then the president of the NCAA at that time, was on the dais with me. And Chris was saying his parents had to go buy the jerseys for $175. Why didn't they give it to him? And he's wearing the Nikes. And I can attest to this. Kobe Bryant, when he signed with us, he signed Adidas. We're at a restaurant in New York. And Kobe looks at me the night we signed. We had just given him over $1 million a year to sign the Adidas shoe contract. And that was the biggest contract for a rookie at that time. And Kobe looked at me very sincerely, Mr. Vaccaro. He said, would Adidas given me this money if I had gone to Duke? I said, we would have liked to, but we quit. He said, what do you mean you quit? Well, Duke wouldn't let you take it. Why? So my answer to you, not to answer whether a pro team will pay them. If Nike, Adidas, Reebok, anybody wants to give them money, Pepsi-Cola, Coca-Cola, when they're 12 years old, if they think LeBron is going to be LeBron, they do it to tennis. I was the one, I wasn't the one, I was part of the reason. They signed Anna Kournikova. I was there at 13 years old. I was down in volunteers with Rob Strasser. When we signed her to Adidas contract with Nick made $1 billion, and so did volunteers camp. All they had down there, ladies and gentlemen, were 14 and 15-year-old, 13-year-old tennis players. Every one of those tennis players had a deal with some shoe company. You know all the amateurs, I use that quotation funny. The Olympians, the track and field guys, they've been running professionally since they were 5 years old. And they were doing it in the 60s and 70s, okay? So the money was in the shoes. But to answer your question, I think the one thing that will happen, that these kids are going to, in 5 years, I think Nike's going to be able to sign when they're 15 years old. And I don't think that has anything to do. Why should the school get the $5 million? And I'll tell you this from the other side of the fence. And I told Kobe, Phil Knight or Rob Strauss, whoever it was, any of the people I worked for, were not all we really wanted. What did I tell you about Beckham started in '65? We're the all-stars who wear the shoes. And you think Kevin Durant would have got $350 million offer 20 years ago? You really think that never would have happened. They just gave a kid $35 million a year to go to Under Armour. Well, it's ironic because we were talking about Kobe, 20 years ago, getting $1 million here. But what if he could have gone to the University of Texas and got an Under Armour deal? Why not stay then? See, they don't answer that. So I'll leave it to this Tom Farrey here. What the NCAA never tells you is, why can't Johnny Manziel sign an autograph? Why did this kid Gurley get a 4-game probation because he signed an autograph? Or the kid Green, the great wide receiver, why did his jersey, he sold his jersey. Why did the kids at Ohio State, Tyrell Pryor, they all got penalized. The school just keeps going on. And you know what I'm sick and tired of? Every time I see one of these academically minded college presidents run through the goddamn tunnel with the flag or the Buckeyes on there, or the Bullseyes, whatever, these guys are supposed to be educators. They're not fans. And the great Donna Sheila in Miami, she used to work for Clinton in his White House. I'm going somewhere I'm not supposed to go. She let the guy that led the Ponzi screen, I forget his name, that gave the money to all the Miami players. There's a little room down there with his name on it. She was right. So Tom, let the kids do their deals. I think in 5 years, Phil will be happy. They can sign Kobe at 10.
All right. Questions? Oh, yeah, right. So, I mean, all these kids got into that prestigious school with these great SAT scores and great GPAs, and they're throwing rocks, and they're turning over vans, and they're acting like a bunch of idiots. So let's not, I mean, I'd say let's all act in a manner that is as responsible as possible as we move through these issues going forward.
And Tom, I agree with you. And the conduct has nothing to do with the crime, though. The conduct was stupid, inappropriate, and unbecoming of a kid who thinks he's a real gentleman and a scholar. I agree with you. I agree. There's no room for that. I think the angst comes about by the authority showing them. What do we do as individuals? We rebel. And why Tell Two Cities is the most famous, greatest book I've ever read, was for the first time in my life, I was conscious of the class structure in the world. Well, the first time I thought the French Revolution was an unbelievable thing. And they didn't sing all the songs there, they just played out the play. My point being, Tom, there's two different stories. What the lady said, what we have to abide by, and everybody got caught up in the penalty. The penalty was so severe that we forgot the reason for the penalty.
Well, what I was fascinated with was why the NCAA decided to step in, and how much of that had to do with what was going on with O'Ban and some of these other cases where the NCAA was under attack, right? I mean, because I've always seen the NCAA as the big-time schools keep it around for 3 reasons. One, because they throw championships, right?
Yes.
They do that pretty well.
Yes.
Very nice. Is terrific. The second is to create the notion of a level playing field. So, and they do that through the enforcement division. We're going to investigate this kid or this school or whatever and create the idea that we're all, but that began to get undermined through the Miami investigation and Ohio State, some of these others. The third is to defend amateurism, right? So, and they do that in the courts. They do that through PR, those relentless PSAs during the March Madness about how we're all going to turn pro and this or that. And they've been incredibly successful there until recently. So the NCAA gets to a point where it's like, okay, well, how are we really, what's our purpose and how do we differ from the pro leagues? Because everybody's saying it's just like the pro leagues. So I wonder how much of that counts. I don't know the answer to that. It's like, you know what, if we take a stand on Penn State and take a moral stand that the leagues would never take, it creates, it buys us some differentiation and therefore credibility into some of these courts. So, again, I don't know if that was part of their tactics or not, but it's an interesting question.
I think O'Ban made them do everything they were doing, and I think that was the one who was going to save them if they did it right. But see, in their own self, this is the way they operate, I believe, Tom. Moving on to the next question, hopefully. My point here, this is what they do. They always have had the last word at the press conference. Otherwise, when you grow older, you pay attention to this. When Tom interviews somebody, the interview's over, basically. There's no comeback to Tom Farrey or outside the line or the NCAA releasing something. See, until this wild child came along, because I am so different that Tom's now interested in me. I got space where no one else got space because I was this wild child. I wasn't a corporate entity. So I was much more interesting because I was on both sides of the fence. But Tom, what you just said was the truth. Whatever did or did not happen at Penn State was not their problem. But Everett made himself the Wizard of Oz that day. He created this mystical figure that he certainly wasn't, will never be. And I think it will add to the demise of the organization.
Do you think each athlete should be compensated equally if there was to be a model where each athlete is paid from the university?
Yes. If you play on a team sport and the team's accruing money off of the corporate sponsorship, let's say Nike gives $5 million to UCLA and it's the whole team. I think everybody on the team gets the same share. If a kid signs a jersey and it's his jersey, or an autograph and it's his autograph, I think the kid gets that money. But anything team-oriented, I think the 90th guy or the 15th on basketball gets the same as O'Bannon, gets the same as Menzel. It's a team sport. They're all in this because all of them wear the shoe. All of them drink the Coke. But on individual things, the jersey, the autograph, that's only him. They're not paying because it's the 90th guy on the thing. They're paying for that specific jersey.
Is that America? I mean, I worked on the ESPN team and we're not all paid the same.
It's a different thing though. But what you have is a pay scale. See, when you do so many undercover stories and you work so long, you'll get a raise. Or if you don't work, you get some bonus for it. They get nothing. Because let me leave you down on this one. A couple of people, I definitely want to hear my word cut off. But let me tell you what Tom did say there. The biggest fallacy about amateur sports is this bullcrap about them saying that all these kids are treated equal. When they do that, I hate those commercials. I hate them. I hate them. Okay? The one I really hate is when the young guy or young girl says, I'm Jimmy Joe Robinson, and I'm a volleyball player, and I'm going to be a professional. I'm going to be a pediatrician. What the hell is he or she going to be? I'm glad you are. Your mother and dad say school. But you know what? Eddie O'Bannon and Johnny Menzel and Terrell Pryor and whoever the stars are this year, they got the money for the Final Four. Their teams are playing because they're at that school. Why don't one of those kids ever say, you know, Eddie O'Bannon, thank you for coming to Penn State, because Nike gave us a $5 million scholarship to not Penn State, UCLA, but thank you for going to Arkansas or whatever. You know what? All those kids get a part scholarship. And the other fallacy is, not every one of them gets a full scholarship. So they say they all get $50,000, $75,000. I don't know what you pay here, but I know if it's a state school, you know, Penn State's different for people in state than it is for people out of state if you're a normal student. So basically, most of the great universities, and Alabama is one of them, most of those kids, 80% of that roster is from Alabama. So the cost of that scholarship, you have to understand the cost of a scholarship is a trip for an athlete. It's a seat in the classroom. Understand what we're talking about here. All we're talking about is a seat that obviously in North Carolina they never feel.
First off, let me say thank you very much to both of you gentlemen for being here tonight. It's an honor and a pleasure to be able to sit here and listen to everything that you guys talk about. One thing that's interesting for me is the fact that I've spent a lot of time around women's sports, specifically working with the U.S. women's national team for soccer and with the figure skating team in Sochi this past year. And one of the things that has always kind of been brought into the conversation around the dinner table a lot is the fact that women's sports doesn't get the same popularity punch that men's sports do unless we win a gold medal, or they're cute looking. But it seems that the cute factor is now becoming more marketable. What's going to be the change that's going to happen in the sports business that's going to actually bring the game of women's sports to a more level playing field with the men, so that we see the NWSL talked about the same way MLS is talked about, the WNBA, and the superstar players like an Elena Deladon, like a Swin Cash, like a Tamika Catchings, talked about the same as a LeBron James.
Well, that's going to come about not so much from the popularity of them winning championships like Tennessee did with Pat and Connecticut does with Dino, is that the professional leagues for women's sports are nil. The WNBA is an absolute failure as far as financial gain for the women. These girls got to go to Europe to play to make money. We all know the fact there. And that's not the foresight of the NBA or the WNBA and college basketball. because we get them on TV and they sell out and they get, you know, whatever the ratings are. They're only particular to 2 schools in basketball. And the saddest part about women's sports, and I agree with you in everything you said, the women athlete is just as good as a women's sport or whatever, because they're an athlete, okay? But the irony here is the whole running of sport in college is football. Football, you know, girls aren't going to play football. That's the whole thing. Football's the money. The other thing is the tournament. What Tom didn't tell you, he loves, I heard him say, I love March Madness. The world loves March Madness. 3 weeks. They love it. They make $9 zillion. They pay all their stuff, and they pay everything. Too much Madness. What they didn't tell you, what Tom didn't ask me tonight, I wish he would have, was ask how much money the football committee's given to all the colleges and all the individual athletes. At least in the basketball, they divide the money somewhat equally. You do get a portion of something. You know who makes the money? The promoters, the guys who run the bowls, the commissioners. It's goddamn sickening, but none of you people say anything about that. You just want to see the championship. Well, that's the problem. Football's the problem. Football's the business. Football makes more money. And you know what? And if this idiot Roger Goodell doesn't wise up, in about 15 minutes, college football will be bigger. Now, it'll never happen in the NBA, no matter how great March Madness is. Why? Because what they learn how to do in the NBA is market that damn thing. And we're going everywhere. And what do they do in the NBA that these idiots don't do in college? Even though we see all the voting BS, they have these kids that are going to Europe all the time. The shoe company sending over to China. Kobe's bigger than China is in America. I mean, that's where the world is going. I was talking to my friend with the Big Ten Network. The big thing that they got to do now with all these networks, they got to get to Europe. That's what they got to get. So I got a little bit off your track. But the reason that inequity of women's sports isn't Title IX or the O'Bannon case. It's football. Tell them to give some of the money. If they give some of the money, then the money that you might have to give to somebody else will be minuscule. They give Krapsky to it. That's what you get zip, and they throw you in the trunk. Why don't they divide that money up? Why should the guy that runs the Chick-fil-A Bowl get $600,000 a year? Why should there be preseason games in some of these cities for independent guys? Why? I have no clue why. Except this guy in Phoenix, he was giving money to a political party. This guy, he like embezzled the money like 5 years ago for the Fiesta Bowl. They didn't even collapse the Fiesta Bowl. It goes on, they just put that guy in prison. Oh, life goes on though. But that's my point. If you want to walk away from something tonight, and my biggest bitch is America and the NCAA. This all-powerful group, and according to Tom, like I said, this guy's been in all this, okay? The irony of the whole story is, we're talking about the FCA, they brought 13 people. You tell me what they have, and I'm not saying these people, but to pick 4 people that are going to happen in December. They're going to pick the same 4 people that pick the team plays out, you lose, you go home. They make a thing. They start talking about the Heisman Award. They have the ESPYs at the end of the season. They do everything for these college kids except what? Reimbursement. Menzel went to Hollywood, got in trouble with some party girls at the Playboy Mansion. Oh, what's in for Johnny Menzel from Walter? ESPN brought his butt out there. What do you want this kid to do? But football, the BCS, it's bullshit, that's what it is. Bullshit. But these guys, no one, so that's your story. Why women's sports are getting deprived of money instead of giving $600,000 credit to the kids? That's the question. All right. Please.
So you do a little more opinionated as we move through here.
What?
You do a little more opinionated.
Well, Tom, I'm just mad that we're almost over.
This question will probably go out to both of you. I know.
Ask Mr. Farrey.
I know the Aspen Institute focuses on education a lot. I respect your responses to why collegiate student athletes deserve to get paid. I do see both sides of the argument on that. And you kind of hinted towards this earlier. I'm just wondering what your guys' opinions are. Where does it stop? I mean, in high school athletics, obviously being in Philadelphia, we have some of the most powerful teams in many different sports in the entire nation. where would you kind of draw the line? Obviously colleges, as you're just talking about, they make millions of dollars off whether it's March Madness or bowls or anything like that. I can speak from firsthand experience. High schools really don't make a lot of money, obviously considering budget cuts and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just curious to see what your opinions are.
Go ahead, you go.
Look, if a school can't afford to pay something, it's not going to pay something, right? So then you could be in a conference where you all agree that it's really a truly amateur experience. Where it gets to be problematic is when sport becomes entertainment. It's not about the person playing the game, the participant, the intrinsic values that we say we love about, and we put at the top of our reasons for why sport should exist. Once you turn anything at any level into entertainment, you are inevitably going to ask the questions of should these people be paid, because they're being turned into content and experiences for other people. There's no way to get around that. That doesn't mean that that's the only model. I think there is a true amateur model, if you want to use that term. Maybe it's not the best term, but a true non-revenue focus on the participants, focus on the intrinsic values, focus on the character development model that can and should exist out there. But you can't say that you can't say you're that, but then you're also pursuing the entertainment model. You gotta make a choice. And that's why the NCAA is in a tough spot now. It says, well, we're amateur, but we want to, on the revenue side, we're going to pursue all the same revenues as the pro teams and the leagues do. And on the amateur side, we're going to spend big coach salaries, the big stadiums and everything. But when it comes to player salaries, well, that's amateur. It's inconsistent. You have to make your choice. And I think every sport organization, from the lowest levels all the way through, has to make their choice. They have to have a fundamental conversation about what their value set is, and then create an economic model around it.
To go to your point on high school, real quick. They're already they just made a deal, ESPN, to televise a little playoff at the end of the year with 6 high school teams. You saw that was announced today. ESPN, I think, is going to do it. The guys around Paragon are going to do it. And in basketball, there is a tournament at the end of the year with so-called high school champion, and everybody included. But to go to revenue, young fella, the only time the revenue will trickle down to high school is when it becomes a monetized vital core in programming. Now what it does, usually what it does is just occupies a space somewhere in the programming market. But to answer your question on individuals and where is it going, if a kid can earn, he should be deprived of it. He individually should not be deprived of it. I'm all for, if you do it legally, you can do something, they don't stop a singer from doing it, they don't stop an actor from doing it. I think it's discrimination in the status point when they categorize individuals. But Tom's right. They can't be half pregnant and half not. They can't be. They got to make a decision.
Well, last one, getting the, so let's do one.
Mr. Vaccaro, the Michael Jordan deal with Nike is one of the biggest ones in pop culture. Michael Jordan in general is one of the biggest athletes to get involved in pop culture. Yet there have been plenty of athletes where they've been liabilities. The biggest one I can think of is O.J. Simpson and Adrian Peterson now, things like that. Do you think that companies starting to sign people at a younger age might lead to more liabilities as those children grow up? And also, do you think that it could lead even them trying to groom these athletes from an extremely young age, kind of having this kid be their project rather than...
It's interesting. I respect your question. In my mind, it's totally illogical because you just answered your own question without realizing. You said you think when these children grow up, they'll turn into bad people, but you just alluded to the fact that Adrian Peterson and some of these other guys got into problems after they went through college. I'm confused here. They went through college. They went to college. They went 3 years with the football players you're talking about, okay? So they were under the purvey of some of the greatest coaches, quote unquote, in the world, some of the greatest academic institutions in the world. But still, yet they did a dastardly thing in the eyes of whatever the course decide. Okay? I don't believe an individual, my point is this, I don't believe an individual is our right to form an opinion of this individual. And I don't think money corrupts. I don't believe that. What is a role model? What the hell is that? who you are. You're responsible for your own thing. So getting paid at 13 has nothing to do with getting paid at 33. You said, you answered your own question. Adrian Peterson's like 25 or 26 years old now. He's been around the league, and by all intents and purposes, he was on the cover of Wheaties. Forget Nike, he was on Wheaties. Okay? And, I mean, seriously. But also, you look around at some of the guys, OJ, what does OJ's situation have to do with being a great athlete or being whatever? See, I think the blindness comes from the public in the sense of a lot of money given to somebody that maybe the public might not think, other than carry a football or hit a baseball or shoot a basketball, deserves it. I think it's in the eye of the public that they, in their own way, discriminate against the individual getting it. Because you know what's funny? Michael's as tricky as anybody. But Michael's parents were solid. The family was solid. He played 3 years in North Carolina for the great Dean Smith. It's interesting. It's very interesting to me. But Michael still got human problems. I mean, he had whatever. But he was able to go through it. He handled them all. He did whatever it was that he had to do. And he became, there will never be another Michael Jordan. First of all, time will allow it. But second of all, you know, you give too much credibility in your young mind right now to the thought that money corrupts. And giving it young means you're corrupted more. And that's the same theory that some people, because Tom used the word street agent, you know, we have a street agent, that's a new term, that's like student athlete. You know, that came into effect in basketball, summer basketball. And the street agent was a person or persons in a family or on the street or close to an individual that may have had a tie to a runner or an agent who had a tie to a money guy who eventually gave money to this kid. And in all probability, the analogy is very true of that term of event. And he alluded to Lenny Cook, which I think is encapsulated all those things. I think all those things did happen to him and others. But also, really, LeBron was accused of almost the same things that Lenny was. LeBron got thrown out of the high school game. He was suspended for a day or two. Am I right, Tom? He took a jersey because he signed an autograph. I mean, really? His mother was going to buy him a Hummer, knowing that he's going to be a multi-zillionaire about a week after he bought that Hummer. But I'll never forget an article Tom Farrey did, a very good journal he did in ESPN. It was the most ugliest article I've ever seen about an individual that the right knew nothing about. And I think that was a framework of a lot of my discomfort, because I really knew LeBron. And it really rubbed me. So to answer your question, I think the things can happen. But then how do you justify John DuPont being crazy and making a movie about him, you know, called The Walk or something? You know, he was a multi-billionaire, son of a multi-billionaire family that loved wrestling. He ended up being a crazy person. But he had the advantages of everything. He was just crazy.
Before I turn it over to Kevin, in one sentence or less.
That's impossible.
You can do it. You can do it. It's an act of discipline. At the end of the day, what do you want them to say about Sonny? Sonny Vaccaro was what?
Good husband to Pam.
And you know Pam, she deserves it. She's a terrific woman, and quite a testament to you and your character. Thanks, Sonny.
Thank you. Thank you very much.